Now, listen to me very carefully, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2. When I made my video response to your video game's release 18 years after the fact, that did not mean to ignore me and make the same mistakes 3 years later. Only for me to have to make yet another response berating your ignoral of my 18-year-late lecture, requiring me to make a now 15-year-late response to your sequel, which came out 3 years later. This is Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2. Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 is a hot mess of a release created by 3 different companies across 3 different consoles. There's one for the DS, there's one for the PS2, and one for the current generation, which is now retro, in the PS3 and Xbox 360 releases, respectively. Now, of course, we have exclusive characters, so let's go for the exclusive characters, but first we're going to go into the three different companies that made this game across the 3 different platforms. We have Vicarious Visions, who created Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. We have N-Space, who created it for the Nintendo DS, PlayStation 2, and the Wii, and then we have the Savage Entertainment, which created the PlayStation Portable release. And of course, across all 3 versions, all 3 companies, there are different exclusive playable characters, including Sentry, if I believe it's correct here. Now, let's go through some of the DLCs, some of the exclusives, and the characters that return for fun in games, and new arrivals as well. Now, we have Black Panther, which is an exclusive DLC character, currently not available on the PlayStation 3 version, and I believe the 360's gone as well. The DLC, that is, I believe that's gone. Now, I can't remember if this is also offered on the PC, so if it is, you might be able to be lucky to find the DLC there, and if you're not, well, I don't think this one has a gold edition like the first one did, so you're just out of luck. Black Panther's gone. We have Captain America, of course, he's in almost all the versions. We have Cable, who is a DLC exclusive to the Vicarious Visions release, so of course he's probably gone for good and nobody can find him anymore. We have Carnage, who is also an exclusive DLC. We have Daredevil, he's included. We have Deadpool, he's included. Gambit, a new arrival! Gambit! Somebody who should have been in the first game is now added into the second game. He's excellent. Now we have Green Goblin, who's surprisingly really good. Hulk, somebody who should have been in the first game, in the base game, and not as DLC, is included in the base game in this one, so we're fine there. We have the Human Torch, of course. We have Iceman, Invisible Woman. Iron Fist is an exclusive character to the Vicarious Visions release of the game, so you have to get this version to play as Iron Fist. You won't be able to get him on the PS2 version or the PSP version. You're out of luck. We have Iron Man, who is in all the versions. Juggernaut, who is DLC. Luke Cage, he's in all the versions. Jean Grey in all the versions. A new arrival. I don't believe she was actually in the first game, even as DLC. Nightcrawler was, but Jean Grey I don't think was. But she is now in this game. She's surprisingly really good. Magneto is once again a DLC character. I thought you would have learned your lesson by now. I would have been forgiving of the DLC garbage in the first game if you included all the characters as DLC from the first game into the base game of the second game. That's usually how it works. That's usually how you should do these things. But no, Magneto is DLC twice in a row. And then we have Mr. Fantastic. He's in all the versions. Miss Marvel, who's in all the versions. Let's talk about Miss Marvel for a second. If you have confusion here, Miss Marvel is Carol Danvers, who is Captain Marvel in the MCU. And Miss Marvel is not Carol Danvers in the MCU. Miss Marvel in the MCU did not exist at the time of Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2's conception. Therefore, Miss Marvel was Carol Danvers. Carol Danvers is now Captain Marvel, and Captain Marvel used to be somebody else called Mar-Vel, another denomination, and was a dude. So now, in the MCU, there is no Mar-Vel. There is only Captain Marvel, who is Carol Danvers, and Miss Marvel, who is another person entirely who didn't exist by the time of Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2, and Captain Marvel is nowhere to be found. Well, I believe he was actually in the first game, but is either a console-exclusive character for the PSP, to my knowledge, but he wasn't in the PS3 release of the first game, though. So, yeah. Are you confused yet? Yeah, you probably are. Oh wait, so Miss Marvel, Carol Danvers' version, returns in this one. She was in the first game as well, so that's fine. Nick Fury is also back, but this time he is nanite infused and part of the storyline for this game. And he is once again added to the roster once you beat the game for the first time. Penance showed up. His Speedball character version is not in the game, but Penance himself is. Psylocke is an exclusive character, I believe, to the, let me try and remember here if I can remember which version Psylocke is in. I think she might be in the End Space edition. She's not in this version. I didn't get to play as her. Psylocke's not in here, but apparently she is playable on another version. So either the End Space edition or that other guy that I don't care about. Then we have Songbird. She's actually surprisingly really good. And she's in the game. She's fun. New arrival. Spider-Man returns. Storm returns. Thing returns. Thor returns. Venom. Okay. You at least got one of the DLC characters from the first game added into the base game of the second game. So you're partially in the clear here. Partially. Only partially. So Venom is in the game, playable. And then, of course, we have Wolverine returning as well. We can't have a game without Wolverine. Now, if we scroll into the End Space release of the game, we have Blade returning for the PS2, PSP, and Wii releases of the game. We have Cyclops coming in, who was DLC in the first game. He is now in the base game of the End Space release of the game for the PS2, the PSP, and the Wii versions of the game. We have Captain America, Daredevil, Deadpool, Gambit, Green Goblin, Hulk, Human Torch, Iceman, Invisible Woman, Iron Man, Luke Cage, Jean Grey, Mr. Fantastic, Miss Marvel, Nick, blah, 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 blah. Let's see, anybody else? Nope. Okay, so most of the characters return, so it's just Blade and Cyclops. I don't even see Psylocke on here. No, Psylocke's here. So those three who are not in this version are in the End Space edition. And then we have the DS edition. The DS edition has some characters that are not in any other version, such as Sentry. Sentry is... well, he's not in the MCU yet. I hear he's planning to show up, but he may not look like his comic book origins. A lot of characters don't look like their comic book origins in the MCU, though I can't imagine you're surprised at that revelation. But Sentry is not in the PS3 version, but he is in the DS release. That is crazy to me, and honestly, you make so many versions. You have exclusive characters on the PSP, exclusive characters on the PS2. You have DLC characters that were only available on the Xbox 360 until they were delisted. You have exclusive characters for your PS3, Xbox 360 releases. You have exclusive characters in your DS release. 2 exclusive characters, for example. You have Sentry and She-Hulk are available on the DS release of Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2. That's crazy. Why? Why do you do this to me, Marvel Ultimate Alliance? Why do you do this to me? I suppose there is some solace to take in that the third release of this game, the third Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, only has one version. It's just the Switch. So there's no other alternate consoles with exclusive characters in there. It's just the Switch. Everybody's just on the Switch. So that's the definitive version. No, I hear it got pretty low reviews, and I've looked at the gameplay, and honestly, I can tell you that I love the look of how Ultimate Alliance 3 looks. I would love to play it. I would. If there's a version that includes all of the DLC without having to, Well, there probably isn't a version like that. And knowing Nintendo, their timeline, the time limit to being able to grab that DLC, is it going to last very long? It's probably only going to last for the next 5 years, maybe 10 years if you're lucky, and then all of the DLC on the Switch is going to be gone. All of it, it's all going to be gone, and that's why I hate DLC. That is why I hate it. It is finite. It doesn't last. It's just a sad reality of the state of affairs that we're in. DLC is a lot harder to add into the archival and the PC world of preservation of video games. It's very hard to grab the DLC and cram it into your file systems of all the archivalizations of the games and all this stuff to the PC version and all that whatever. It's a bit difficult to do that. So once the DLC goes away, it's gone. All of that content, the time and effort people put into making that thing a reality is gone. That's why I hate DLC. I despise it for that reason. I really do. If it was intended to be around forever, the console clearly isn't forever, but the internet, at least I hope, will be around for quite a while. So, at least in regards to that, you would think that once the lifespan on the console has died, has run out, you will put all of it on the PC for archival purposes for players to be able to grab and play to their heart's content. But no, we can't do that. That would just be too logical to do that. Oh no, there's a rolling maze of licenses. With the person who made the game not owning it because of the publishers and all this other stuff. I don't profess to know everything about the whole licensing ownerships of the IPs and who owns what and why 3 different companies made the same game, probably to save time on all of the releases of the game. It's just not my thing to get into all of that, because it would just devolve into another half-hour rant about DLC and not about the actual game itself, much like how this video is under threat of being. So let's actually talk about Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 and what characters are actually in the game and how they play. We're going to talk about how the characters play in this version of the game. First, Captain America is fun. This version of the game deals with the Civil War plotline as your Act 2, and actually requires you to play the game twice to get both storylines, because by the start of Act 2, you have to pick to either be on Captain America's side or Iron Man's side in the Civil War plotline. Acts 1 and 3 are mostly the same, regardless of which playthrough you pick, so it's only Act 2 that changes. And depending upon which act you choose, there are characters that are going to be either locked off to you or given to you. If you choose Captain America's side, you obviously get Captain America, Songbird, Captain America, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist. Now, naturally, these 3 characters, if you chose Iron Man's side, will join your team by Act 3. However, this game does a certain type of character progression system where you gain gold points or whatever to add into various attributes onto your character. And depending upon certain things that you either meet or fail to meet, some of these attributes will be locked off to you. Some characters have 2 attribute slots that are locked off if you choose Captain America's side. So you're on Captain America's side, then these 2 that require you to be on Iron Man's side will be locked off to you for that playthrough until you do a New Game Plus and join Iron Man's side, in which case all 4 attributes will be available to you, except for the characters who are on specific sides. Captain America, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist. They have 4 attribute slots that require you to join Captain America's side in Act 2 in order to unlock those. So if you join Iron Man's side, those 4 attribute slots will be locked until you join Captain America's side in this subsequent playthrough. And vice versa for the Iron Man team that is exclusive, being Iron Man, Mr. Fantastic, and Songbird. Those 3 are on the Iron Man side. Does it make sense? Everybody else is pretty much available from this just by playing the game, except for 3 characters: the Hulk, Jean Grey, and Thor. If you wish to acquire these 3 characters, there is a handy-dandy cheat code that you can include and unlock them right away, or you can collect 5 items scattered throughout the game's levels. Like, I believe for Thor, you just need to find 5 Asgardian runes scattered throughout the game, and once you do that, you will unlock Thor. And the same for Macran crystals and all this other stuff for Hulk and Jean Grey as well. So, or you can just put the cheat code in like me. But I warn you, eager beaver, cheater, player, if you put any other cheat code in other than the 3 character codes for Jean Grey, Hulk, and Thor, you will disable saving. You won't be able to save the game. That is disappointing to me, but I understand it, because this game does have trophy support. And you will get trophies for collecting characters, for collecting attributes, for doing all this other collectible stuff like the dossiers and all this other stuff that you can find throughout the game. So by just putting a cheat code in and grabbing it, you would get free trophies. So that's why they disable saving for that. Personally, if you ask me, I would just say, if you put in the cheat codes, just disable trophies. Let me save the game for that save file, but for that save file that has cheat codes activated, just disable trophies. That way, the player can play the game to their heart's content, but not be able to get trophies, which is an acceptable loss for most players. But by making it so that you can't save the game, you thusly make the game pointless to use cheat codes in, because you can't save the game. The players that play this on the PC are probably going to find mods to mod in these cheat codes anyways, and still be able to save their game. So I personally don't see much point in this tactic for this cheat code stuff. The first version did not have trophy support, though, so it makes sense how you were able to put cheat codes into that first game and be able to save your game and all that whatnot. Admittedly, a lot of characters are not DLC in this version, but there are a lot of exclusive characters for versions. If you buy the PSP version, the DS version, the PS2 version, etc. But they also axe a lot of characters that were from the first game, from the second game. For example, Ghost Rider is nowhere to be seen, not even as DLC. Hawkeye and Black Widow are also gone. There's no Moon Knight, there's no Colossus, there's no Doctor Strange. So that's right away 6 characters that are not available. And Nick Fury in his normal version is also not available in this game, no matter what version, no matter what DLC or exclusive version of the game you get. These 7 characters are locked. You don't get to play as them in the sequel, which personally I disagree with. I think they should have been included into the base game. Characters like Thor, Hulk, and Jean Grey have no purpose in the story, but you could still use them, right? That's how these guys should have been like. But I digress. It's fine, I guess. Personally, though, you know me, I like to hoard characters, to play as all of them, to have a one-stop shop, one singular game with everybody in it, you know? And apparently that is Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 with all of the DLC for the Nintendo Switch. Because to my knowledge, the Nintendo Switch version, once you have acquired all of the DLC, has most everybody you can think of in it. I can't remember if Moon Knight's there, though. That's the only one I can't remember if he's in there or not. But everybody else, to my knowledge, I think should be there. What else can I say about this? The first act of the story is the rising action. You're going on various missions, and the public starts to get scared of superheroes and all of the collateral damage, blah blah blah. It's kind of stupid, but then the whole Civil War idea in general was kind of stupid to me personally. But I can understand the fear and sympathize with it, but it's basically the Mutant Registration Act. After the final mission of Act 3, they try to pass the Hero Registration Act, which is basically the Mutant Registration Act from the X-Men series. Since, you know, the MCU's Civil War didn't come out yet, but the Civil War comics line did. And it was very reminiscent of the Mutant Registration Act, where you had to register your name and what you can do with the government, and that way they know what you can do. So if Cyclops blows up a car when trying to stop some robbers or something, maybe Scott Summers will be left with the bill later on for that car. And that kind of makes heroes accountable for the damages they do trying to save the world. You know, it's like, oh, you saved the world, but France is in ruins, and France wants you to pay for it, heroes. Oh, it's fine. You saved the world. We're alive thanks to you, but this building is in ruins. Somebody must be responsible for it, and the villain is clearly not capable because you beat them up, or maybe the villain's dead, etc. So it's just a silly little Civil War Registration Act to get the characters to fight each other. And naturally, most people will probably join Captain America for their first playthrough, because it just makes the logical sense that Captain America is a patriot, but he's not a patriot in the current government of his country. He is a patriot to his country and the ideals that that country initially represented, regardless of who is currently in charge of it. He fights for the ideals of the country that he believed in, rather than the people currently holding the reins of it. That's why he disagrees with the Registration Act and believes that it's the right thing to do to help people the way that things have been going on prior, rather than being beholden to a singular government to basically be a police force for the rest of the world. He doesn't think that's the right thing to do. And Iron Man kind of agrees with him, but he wants to work within the system to fix things. So he joins the Registration Act and tries to mitigate the damages. And then there's some stupid stuff with Mr. Fantastic running some numbers and says, if we don't do this registration thing, the world will end. And it's kind of dumb. They don't really explain it, because if they did, they probably realized they didn't have too strong of a storyline here. So they don't really explain Mr. Fantastic's numbers crunching, and then the fight just happens. And then Act 3 is the nanites. Let's talk about the nanites. So Iron Man and Mr. Fantastic discover some nanites that were in enemy tech hands in the previous country of Latveria that Doctor Doom used to be in control of. And they decide to reverse engineer these nanites to put into to villains' heads, to basically sap away their free will and force them to work for them as a slave force to help round up the other superheroes that evaded the Registration Act. I don't know if I could ever excuse such a thing like that. I don't think I ever could. Could Tony Stark actually agree with that logically if it weren't trying to be forced with Civil War stuff? I don't know if even Tony Stark would agree with such an action, but then he made Ultron, so... Well, no, he actually did make Ultron. According to Ultimate Alliance 1, the Ultron thing was just an MCU thing. As apparently Ultron, as of Ultimate Alliance 1, it was Hank Pym who made Ultron. That's a little fun little piece of information there. So that was kind of fun to learn about and all that stuff besides. What else? So the nanites get put into villains' heads like Green Goblin and Venom, and that's why they're playable in the game, because they're the two main villains that you fight that are nanite controlled. And then once you beat them, Black Panther is able to reverse engineer a cure to get rid of the nanites from the two villains in question, and then you get to use Venom and Green Goblin in your playable characters list. And that's the irritating part. Black Panther is a big part of Act 3, and yet he's not playable! Cable is a big part of Act 2, yet he's not playable! You know, Colossus is in the game, and he's not playable. That's kind of irritating to me. And then the game, the DLC says, oh, you're right, we should probably make these guys playable. Our bad. Let's add them in as DLC! And now the DLC is gone. You can't get it. But yeah, I'd agree. I'm not going into another DLC rant. We're not going into another DLC. So the nanites, the villains, happen. And Captain America says, you know what, we gotta stop these guys. And Iron Man realizes, oh, you know that nanite idea I had? That was actually stupid. Now I have to undo what I did. And he joins Captain America in stopping the nanite-infused villains and the Collective, because they're capturing superheroes and infusing them with nanites too, as well. And Nick Fury gets captured and he gets nanites, and and the whole Act 3 is basically stopping the world from being a collective AI intelligence of the nanites and all that stuff. And we were able to succeed, and we beat the nanites, and in so doing, the Registration Act is appealed, and there's no more Registration Act anymore. And our heroes are happy about that. And that's the story. Now, how about the characters? Which ones are my favorite? Which ones are the best ones, in my opinion? Well, I found Wolverine, once again, to be one of the best characters of the game. His playstyle is aggressive, he is very tanky, he has a healing factor, he's just an all-around good character that has staying power. So if you're playing on various difficulties, that healing factor can really help you out. He has excellent staying power. His special attacks all have good damage dealing capabilities. He's just all around one of the best characters to me to use. Followed by Thor, Miss Marvel, and Hulk. Those three are also big, brutish, damage-dealing warrior character types that are more about tanking attacks and being offensive. Their specials are all offensive capabilities. They're just really good all around. Other good characters, in my opinion, would be Iron Man, Iceman, and Human Torch, and Songbird. All four of these guys have similar movesets. They have a beam-type attack. They have a rapid-fire type attack. They're just overall very powerful, damage-dealing ones, though Iron Man is the only one that has tank ability, being able to tank damage. The other three are pretty, they're like glass cannons. They deal damage, but they can't take it. And that's how they varietize the characters. Some characters act as support, such as Iron Fist. He may be decent offensively, but he can't take damage. But he has a special ability that heals the party, so he's a support character. Spider-Man is also kind of a support character. He helps deal some damage from the sides. He doesn't actively get in the middle of the fighting, because if he did, he'd probably go down really quickly, because his defense isn't as high as, say, the Hulk. The Hulk is designed to wade into enemy combat and beat up anybody in his face, and tank any damage that anybody decides to deal at him. Wolverine works the same way. And I found that type of playstyle, that type of aggressive, in-your-face playstyle, to be towards my benefit. That's how I would play the game. So I found characters like Wolverine, Thor, Hulk, Miss Marvel to be the best team for me to use in that regards. Although, admittedly, I really enjoyed using Gambit. Even though Gambit, moveset-wise, isn't as good as he could be, he's kind of just one of the weaker characters in my opinion, which is disappointing because he is one of the coolest designs, so I found myself using him a lot. Deadpool is a weaker Wolverine. He's faster, but he's just weaker overall. Nick Fury also gets a healing factor, so the three characters with healing factors are Wolverine, Deadpool, and Nick Fury with the nanites. So if you want characters with staying power, if you like characters that stay in the fight longer, or characters that can heal after the fight, instead of trying to find crates to bust them open to get healing orbs to heal your characters, then you want to make a team of these three, with the fourth one probably being somebody like Thor or the Hulk or whatever. And overall, that's usually how it is. You have support, you have offense, and then you have glass cannons. That's basically... Oh, wait, we have some psychics. Psychic support characters, though I would just put them in just the general support side. There are two characters that basically work the same way, Invisible Woman and Jean Grey. Though Jean Grey, I feel, is more useful because Jean Grey can fly, and she has a much stronger shockwave attack. Though Invisible Woman has a much better barrier-type attack. And she can turn invisible, clearly. Jean Grey is very nerfed compared to her Phoenix counterpart that's playable in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, though she is still very decent in this game. Story-wise, in regards to the characters, the main ones, like Captain America, Iron Man, they will have plenty of dialogue in the game. They'll have plenty of things to say. But most of the characters that are in your party, most of the characters that are in the game that are playable, many of them don't have much of a story. You can have unique dialogue sometimes. For example, when you're playing the Iron Man plotline, Mr. Fantastic is available to talk to in between missions. And if you talk to him as Invisible Woman, you will get unique dialogue options rather than just picking somebody like Storm to talk to Mr. Fantastic, who doesn't really have anything, just generic responses. Wolverine has probably the most unique dialogue that is voiced. When you're playing as Wolverine voiced, he will probably have a vocal dialogue with other characters versus many of the others who don't have that option. Stan Lee makes a cameo, voiced by Stan Lee. He plays as a senator that is anti-registration. I thought that was pretty nice. A little cameo for Stan Lee. I don't think he had one in the first one, but I'm glad that he had one in the second one. That was really cool to include him. What else can I talk about? What else? Well, I already told you my favorite team: Wolverine, Thor, Hulk, and Miss Marvel. Those four were the best ones in the team. Miss Marvel is just a damage-dealing tank. The Hulk is just a tanky character in general. And Thor is just all over the place. He has a nice beam-type attack with his lightning. He could just chain lightning out. He could slam his hammer down on the ground to have an AoE damage and also give himself a damage buff. He's just overall a really good guy, really good character. But the best one, in my opinion, is Wolverine, clearly. I can't speak for the DLC characters or the exclusives across other versions of the game. Sentry may be the best character, but you only get to play as Sentry on the DS! But yeah, that is Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2. Is it better than the first game? I think I'd probably put them both on the same level. Music-wise, I think the first game has better music. This one definitely has more superhero-themed music, but I just really like the music of the first game so much better. Roster-wise, well, since half the cast of the first game isn't there, and half the new cast in the second game isn't in the first game, it's kind of a give and take there. The DLC, Magneto is DLC in both games, so that's a point lost. Cyclops is no longer DLC, but he is now a console exclusive, a version exclusive. So if you don't get the proper release version of the game, if you don't get the PS2 or the PSP version, you won't get Colossus, which is irritating to me, very irritating to me. There's no reason for this. There's none. There's no reason for that. Anybody who is in any other version should be in all other versions, in my personal opinion. Was it fun though, like gameplay wise, compared to the first game? Yeah, there is a moveset improvement. There is some slight variations to the movesets for all of the returning characters versus the new characters with good movesets as well. There are far more enemies that get to appear on the screen for you to beat up, so it's more exciting, and it can be more threatening, with a lot of enemies on the screen at once, taking out your party members if you're on higher difficulties. So that's a lot better. There's some good attacks that are upgraded. Some of them have the exact same movesets from the first game, like Human Torch and Iceman. But overall, it's a very fun time. Both ways, but this is an improvement overall in the first game in all sorts of gameplay, combat-wise. Story, I do prefer the first game to the second one. I just thought it was a much better story. Character involvement, character interactions, the first game has the best, because in every hub world, in Stark's Tower, in Asgard, in Doctor Strange's study in his house, the Sanctum Sanctorum, there is a second room in every hub world where some of your party members are found, and you can talk to them, and they are voiced, so you get to learn about those characters. They also have their own unique simulation mission, where you can get a little more story about them and use them in a unique experience. That's not in the second game. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 hubs, technically 5, if you view the registration, the pro registration Stark Tower version. There's 2 versions of Stark Tower. One is only available on Iron Man's side, and the other one, Hydra's base, is only available on Captain America's side. So you get 5 hubs technically, and there are no unique character interactions with your party members. I never got to speak to Storm, for example. I never got to speak to the Invisible Woman. I never got to speak to Human Torch. I never got to find Iceman in any of the areas to talk to him. Wolverine was available. Some characters were available to talk to: Wolverine, Thor, Mr. Fantastic, Iron Man, and Captain America, clearly. But most of the characters in the game that are playable, you don't get to interact with them at all. They're just there to use. Gambit, you never get to talk to him. That's disappointing. You know, he's a new character. Give him something to do. You know. Although, admittedly, there is some interesting bits. Like in the first game, you could pick various little questions you can ask NPCs during the hub world areas. Depending upon who your player character is, their dialogue that you can read, the question that is asked, well, it's pretty much the same question. It's asked in a different way. For example, when you're playing as Thor, he will speak with "doth thou." He'll use that dialogue that you can read. When you play as Wolverine, you can see a more gruff type of dialogue. When you play as Spider-Man, there's more quirks and jokes. So that I liked that. I did like that, but it wasn't voiced. It wasn't voiced. You just get to read it. But they offered a little bit. They offered a little bit, which I appreciate the effort. I do. I appreciate the effort, but it could be better. Was it fun, though? Yeah, it was. But with the realization of all of those characters that I will never get to play as, it kind of irritates me. It does. Because I see no reason for that. I see no reason for console exclusives. I see no reason for that. If I want to play a Sentry, I have to get the DS version. Why? Why can't he just be in all versions? Why can't he just be in all of them? Why? I don't get it. But 3 different companies, so maybe each one wasn't on the same page on which characters they wanted to add versus what. So that was disappointing. It was. But it didn't impede me too much. I was able to enjoy what I got. I was able to enjoy the characters that I was able to use. And most of them were fun to use for at least one level. So there are admittedly some that were better than others. Just depends on your playstyle. Maybe you will find playing as Spider-Man, Storm, Iceman, and Human Torch much better than my preferred team. And that's fine. Everybody's preferred team may be different. There's no universally best character, though in my opinion it's probably going to be Wolverine. But yeah, that is Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2. Thankfully, most of this wasn't a rant on DLC this time, but I did not miss the opportunity to rant on DLC. I never will. I hate it. Play this if you want, or don't.